Today's episode is extra special because I'm sitting down with someone who has had a huge impact on my life over the last few years. Now, out of all the psychics I've worked with, this person has helped me more than anyone else. And the wild thing is, it's so effortless for them. These gifts have been with them since birth. But as is often the case for those born with extraordinary abilities, it hasn't always been easy. It's taken years of learning how to protect their energy, set strong boundaries, and fully step into their power and gifts. And in this conversation, we explore that journey, what it really took to bring those gifts online, plus some of the things we've both been feeling in the world lately. And if you've been feeling overwhelmed or energetically heavy recently, we also share grounded, practical tips for moving through those waves with more ease and clarity. And this one is full of insight, laughter, and those aha moments to stay with you long after you listen. So please give me a big hand in welcoming my dear friend Mary Buckingham onto the show. Mary Buckingham, I am so excited to be joined here with you today. You know, any day that I get to hang out with you is a really good day in my book. And guys, as I said in the intro, Mary and I have known each other for what, about 3-4 years now?
Yeah.
It's got to be at least around there, right? We got introduced through Shaker. Thank you, Shaker. Shout out to Shaker. The best connector in the world by far. You know, funny story too that I'll tell really quick. You know, when I met Shaker, I was at Paul Chek's shamanic sound healing workshop. And he had just heard me on Paul Chek's podcast when I went on in 2021. And he was like, hey, I think I have some people you'd like. Do you mind if I connect you to a couple of people? I was like, yeah, sure. And literally like 65 people later, this kid is still connecting with people. I'm like, holy cow, bro, you weren't kidding. But, you know, when we met, I immediately just resonated with everything you are and everything you be and everything you do. And you've changed my life in innumerable amount of ways through the sessions that you've brought me through and just through your friendship and everything that we have in our lives. And, you know, it was really funny because I had another, you know, interesting memory or funny memory that I can remember is when me, Chris, and Shlomo came to California and we ended up hanging out with you. And the first night we went to smoke a joint and ride bikes. And I remember Chris was like, so Mary's like a psychic? And I'm like, well, she's her own category. She does a lot of these things, but you'll see. And I remember me and Shlomo were in front. You know, we're just talking, Bluetooth speaker on, and I can hear you and Chris in the back getting into some like real awesome stuff. And halfway through the bike ride, Chris comes up to me. He's like, dude, Mary just she just changed my life. I'm like, I told you, dude, you know, she doesn't even try. It's just so effortless for her. And so I'm really excited to have you on today to keep diving in. And for anyone who hasn't listened to the episodes Mary's been on, you've been on, I think, twice. We did one in person, I know, in your actual studio in Balboa Island. I think that's right?
Yes.
And so if you haven't heard that, guys, we go extensively into her journey in those episodes. But just to start out, for anyone who hasn't heard those other episodes, I'd love if you could give just a quick expose of who you are and how you got to be here with me today, right? Like how you started to unlock the gifts that I would call, for sake of conversation, psychic awareness, psychic gifts, deep intuitive, you know, awareness. Like I'm not exactly even sure what to call it because it's totally something way bigger than I've ever experienced from a psychic or even a medium or whatever. It's kind of like one big yes and. So how did you first tap into that? How did you notice that it was something that other people didn't have access to? And what was that like for you? Was it easy growing up like that? Was it challenging? Because I imagine some people listening maybe either already tapped into some of these abilities or tapping into them right now with the consciousness shift of the planet. Mm-hmm. And they probably got some questions. So I'd love if you could share a little bit of the details of your journey with us.
Well, first of all, Ryan, you always share such heart-centered, like compliments and love. And I truly appreciate it and receive it deeply. And because it's just, you're always very authentic and genuine. And
thank you.
I feel just as grateful for the friendship. And it's interesting because I felt like at the time when Shaker came into my life, which then he linked me with Ryan, was when some of the universal synchronicities began to increase. Because truly, like upon meeting Shaker and then Ryan, it's like this whole sort of grid network opened up. And I think to kind of go back into like the backstory, very brief, I definitely have always been a sensitive being. You know, I came in as a very young child with imaginary friends, and like I was very artistic. I loved to write. But then, you know, programming, indoctrination, society, karma, whatever you want to call it, kind of starts to come in. And that was my story for like a long time. So I went through a lot of different things, and but being sensitive, I felt everything very strongly. So I never really had a respite from like the pain. So, you explore distracting yourself, whether it's through like entertainment or school or sports or music, whatever it is, like you kind of try to do those things unconsciously, and then you realize those things don't work because the pain is still here, or like something still doesn't feel, I don't feel like something's missing, or there's got to be more to this, or why is everyone acting like nothing's wrong, or why are people
Yeah.
not talking about what's going on
Yeah.
underneath the surface, or why is this person saying this to me verbally, but there's clearly something else going on behind the scenes. So I started to put two and two together. Okay, I'm obviously picking up on something that others are saying, oh, you're overthinking it, or it's not that deep, or it's like, just relax, So I know, I'm sure any like highly sensitive or tapped in people have experienced that many times, where people are like, it's not that deep, or like, don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a good point to like not taking things so seriously, and I'll get to that later. But basically, I think ultimately what I feel as I continue to pass through time, what the truth feels like for my story is like my soul just really began to awaken on my soul's timing, and my human third dimensional avatar um started to become aware of something else arising within me that basically was like saying, um I'm taking over. Like my higher self, my soul essence was like, I'm going to start to show you through your eyes um what the truth is as I see it, as the us each being fractals of the one, the source, whatever people want to call it. So as like this part of us, this stream of infinite wisdom started to kind of awaken within me, it was right in line with when I left kind of the real world, or like my corporate jobs, and started to explore different modalities. But again, someone being more right brained and creative and into like, niche stuff always, it was kind of an easy transition to leave that world. It was very liberating, actually, because I was in a lot of pain, just emotional pain. I just could not understand why I was feeling so much pain, and everybody around me was able to kind of like function and do these normal jobs and be seemingly quote unquote fine, which obviously isn't the actual truth, but they were just doing just fine. So um as I've progressed or evolved on my journey, um it's really a matter of continuing to kind of ground into my body, because basically as the kundalini energy began to rise, and that really started in 2017. um it starts to bring these illusions like right in front of the face. And so it's like reckoning with these things that I couldn't ignore any longer. Didn't even know I was ignoring it. It was just kind of like the nature of this reality as we continue to wake up. It's interesting because I feel like we always repeatedly hear remembering who we really are and like waking up. I don't necessarily love those phrases because it's kind of confusing. Like I feel, because people are like, what do you mean, what does it mean to like remember who we really are? Like what does that actually mean? And I feel like as I've kind of tried to understand that languaging or jargon myself, it's like being your own authentic version of self in all of its magnificence. So all of the light and all of the shadow, the whole spectrum of that technicolor wheel that we are. allowing all of those parts to come into more of a coherent, balanced whole, wholeness,
Mm.
because the soul is whole. It's and obviously there's things in the soul that need that, I don't want to say need, but people have to purify or cleanse or rectify or go through their
Mm.
cocoon, which is like the process of correcting, the soul, or, rectifying any things that were done to purify it, to like basically return back to source.
Mm.
I feel like a lot of, waking up and tuning in is about intuitively connecting with the natural laws of the universe.
Mm.
And that can only be done in such a deeply internal, honestly silent way. It's not something that, um, like, obviously we're talking about it now, here now. But the process of like awakening or ascending is so deeply internal, and it's requires discipline. It's like allowing your higher self to discipline the self that's the ego, because the ego is so sophisticated in many ways and how it wants to protect the person and label and judge everything. And so with multidimensional awareness, it's something I talk about. It basically just another way of saying, like, I am a medium technically, but I don't label myself as like a medium. I am a psychic technically, but I'm not like, I don't do psychic readings. So kind of like connecting with what you were saying, I think as we all in our own ways continue to anchor into our soul essence, we all have different points of origin, and we all
Mm.
have different experiences, whether it's on Earth or off planet in different star systems. If that resonates with you, fine. If it doesn't, that's also fine, because some people have not had lives outside of Earth, and then some people have had more lives off Earth.
Mm.
So it's kind of like, I but as I've continued to tune in to self, the cosmic energies is what I feel I connect with. And I realized as I continued to tune into my soul and my soul's memories, it's like, okay, I'm tuning into the soul frequency of other beings, people, animals, other trees, whatever. And that's because of my soul's essence. It's like when my sensitivity or abilities opened or turned on, I describe this to some people, it was like a memory just got activated. It's like doing something that you do routinely, it just kind of returned. And that
Mm.
was like why I say when things shifted, my soul was like, all right, girl, like time's up, because you're kind of like, you need to like get on track here. And it was abrupt and it was alarming. It was like, there's, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, like there's experiencing ungroundedness and just feeling, um, you know, you might kind of open up in that way. And all of a sudden, you can kind of be opened up in that way for a while. And you really want to kind of get reconnected and anchored into earth or your body, but there might be a challenge there. And so for some people want to really go up and connect psychically and open their whatever, their third eyes and upper chakras, but it's getting into the body is such a beautiful process too. And because the fact is Rudolf Steiner says this quote, we were at one point 90% spiritual beings, 10% material, and that has been reversed.
Mm.
And with where we are, where our planet is in our galaxy and where it's stationed, it's aligned with the galactic belt.
Hmm.
And so the frequencies coming in are creating this energy on planet Earth that people are receiving more light. And so the density is coming to the surface to be released. And that's obviously why there's all these things going on the planet that are being purged, that are coming to the surface to be revealed. And I find that the more grounded and stable and centered within self that one can be, that's like the most service you can be to all beings, because we're all connected. And so the more centered and stabilized within that you are, and like non-reactive, I'm not sitting here saying don't feel your emotions, but coming from someone who like really rode high emotional currents, you kind of you begin to learn how to channel that emotional energy, which is what they say is how you really connect to higher beings, obviously is through the heart, through emotions. So it's like transmuting those energies that might be intense or aggressive or separate or fearful to a more refined, higher emotion.
Hmm. That makes perfect sense. And I was taking a couple notes when you were talking. The first thing I wanted to draw some attention to is how our stories are so similar. I've never heard anyone else, not that it doesn't exist. I mean, I would imagine it's probably common, but I've never heard anyone state it in the same way that I did, that you just did, which was, the first job I ever had, first like quote unquote real job, was Staples. All right. And I joke, it's not a joke actually, but I joke that the smell of reams of paper and office supplies still haunts me in my nightmares. The most boring thing I could possibly ever imagine doing. Like, what is more boring than selling fucking paper? Okay. Nothing beats that. All right. Like, you're a trash man. Cool. That's literally more interesting than selling paper. Like, literally anything is. And so I remember I got the job, and at the time they paid like $9.25 an hour, which was like, whoa, because minimum wage is like $6 or whatever. So my buddy worked there, and he seemed to like, I love this kid, but he's a little monotone and whatnot. He's like, I like it. It's fine. So I'm like, all right. So I get hired, and the whole time I'm just like, dude, this is soul crushing. And I didn't say it that way at that age. I didn't have this awareness, but how I would state it today was that it was soul crushing. And I just remember like coming up with this whole story that, wow, I guess I just must have bad work ethic or be lazy or something, because I just cannot make myself do this. And so that then led me on a path that got me here today. Of course, I won't get into everything, but I've never heard anyone state it that way, of like looking around at everyone and just seeing how they're seemingly unfazed or like just like going with the flow. And I'm like burning up inside. I'm like, dude, I'll do anything. Give me something fucking more novel than this. And then the other thing too that you mentioned right at the end was being responsive versus reactive with emotions. And this is something that may trigger some people listening, but sorry, not sorry. So at the end of the day, emotions are simply a sensation, right? If we feel happy, we might feel it in our heart. If we feel heavy, there's a place in our body we feel it. So if someone says, and this is one of the biggest and most popular things to say now is, oh, are you invalidating my feelings? And it's like, no, I'm not invalidating the sensation you're having. I'm invalidating the story that your brain has put on top of it, because emotions and stories are not the same thing. And I think this is one of the challenges in the spiritual space right now, is that people are almost being glorified for being emotional. And I see it happening a lot with men as well. It's like, yes, men do need to cry. Yes, men do need brotherhood, but they also don't need to be crying all the time. They also don't need to be going to retreats just to heal all the time. Like, we're putting this emphasis on really not a sensation. That's what people are told it is. It's my emotions. I need to work on my emotions. It's like, no, your stories are what's getting you here. It's not the emotion. The emotion was a sensation that you felt for the first time in your life, and a story got put on it. And now every time you feel that sensation, that same story pops up. And now, instead of working on it, you're just going to say, oh, you're invalidating my feelings or something, right? So I totally agree with you that yes, emotions, the sensations you feel are valid, but you are the creator. And I say you figuratively, not like you, like I'm pointing my finger at you, Mary, but like, but you get to be aware or unaware of the story that is being placed on it, and the ability to respond or react to whether or not that story is actually accurate for that sensation, or whether or not it's just something from childhood that you've never had the ability to think into because you've never thought about your thinking before. And like Mark Twain says, you come alive in a new way when you learn to think about your thinking. And I think that's a lot of the challenge now is people are almost bypassing and just kind of wearing the spiritual badge of, I'm just letting my emotions out. It's like, no, you're just running amok in your stories and rummaging is really what you're doing. Like if you watch kids, this is a great example. All right. It's like kids will feel something. I'm talking about kids before 6 years old. All right. Maybe even before 5 years old, maybe even around 3 or 4. When they feel an emotion, it has a start and an end. And when it's done, it's done. Okay. It doesn't keep coming back up unless they have some kind of health disorder or something that makes them feel sick or something like that. But like when I was a kid, I'd be running around, I'd want a candy bar, I wouldn't get it, I'd cry, and then eventually I'd be done with crying and I'd be back on. That's how this is supposed to work. Like kids are the best example of how this is supposed to work. But adults, on the other hand, what we do is we overcomplicate it like crazy. That's what I did for years. I went to a inner child healing retreat, let's say, spent like $7,500 on it because I was really nervous. Like I was seeing these other people. This is when I first got into the coaching space about 6 years ago. I was seeing some people have these like exorcism type fucking things happen at retreats. And, you know, people would try to coach me on certain things about my dad dying or whatever. Cause I thought, I'm like, there must be something there. Like, oh my God, like I must have stored all this trauma. I'm learning about all this stuff and I must have stored all this. And really, at the end of the day, what happened was I convinced myself that I had all this trauma that I actually didn't have because I thought that the only way to process emotion was through crying. And so this is just a small example of how these things start. And then I was actually speaking with a brain integration therapist that I resonate a lot with. Her name's Nancy. Shout out to Nancy. And you know, I'd gone to this retreat. They're trying to trigger me, which was so weird, by the way. They're trying to do it in a sober state. Again, no judgment. It works for other people. It just didn't work for me. Yeah. And they'd ask you, like, what were the horrible events that happened in your life? I tell them, and then they try to just say things that will get me mad or whatever. And I'm like, my ego is way too cunning for that. And that's not a flex. It's just like, I'm aware I just told you these things. So my ego's already built defenses around these things. Like, yes. It's like if you tell someone, hey, this is what would hurt me, and then they try to say it back to you, it's like, it's not going to hurt me now. You have to catch me off guard with it. Yeah. So basically, I left that retreat feeling very fucked up because I was like, oh man, like I couldn't even do it with professionals. Like this must be really deep. And then I had a mushroom trip where I really wanted to cry. I was like, I need to get this out of me. And so I had this trip and I'm sitting there and I'm having a blast. Like I'm just laughing, talking to God. And I just have this idea come through right from my higher self. And the idea was laughter is a lot like crying. And I said it out loud. I was like, oh, laughter is a lot like crying. And in that moment, boom, I went from laughing to crying. And in that moment, it changed something in me. So a couple of weeks later, I go to the brain integration and I'm telling Nancy about this. And she's like, you know that laughter is the exact same thing as crying. So if you laugh a lot, that's how you're expressing emotion. And I was like, well, that makes fucking sense because I laugh constantly. I'm like a big goofball. So, you know, again, like it took me over $20,000 to figure out that actually all I needed to do was just stop thinking these stories that weren't fucking real, that I allowed other people to put in my mind. It wasn't anyone else's fault. It was my fault. Right. And so again, like I totally get how in the spiritual space today and everything like that, some of these things that yes, are good. Like, yes, you want to feel your emotions. You want to get clear in your stories, but also you don't want to rummage and get stuck there forever and glorify it, you know? And so I really liked that part when you said that. So it's very interesting. You know, we always resonate on a very similar level, Mary.
Well, it's like, you know, we do. And I think also like, it's nice to have, you know, because people really push people to be in communities and like make sure you are part of, you know, you have people to connect with. And honestly, for me personally, the less time around people and the more time in silence and solitude was actually what resonated for me more. And as a result of what other people think sometimes in spaces, especially when you're vulnerable and you're trying to find where you belong and stuff like that, it's like I would find myself in situations repeatedly that I was like, this does not feel good. Like this actually made me feel worse, which in hindsight, of course, I went through enough of that where I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to do it the way that my intuition and my higher self is guiding me because I'm developing more trust in that now, and I'm going to go forth with that. And that's also right in line with taking radical responsibility. I think with pain or any forms of suffering or trauma that we've all had, there's this victim mentality that creeps in. And I know people are very touchy with this subject, you know, especially survivors of abuse and things like that. But, and I'm one of those people, like I've experienced abusive situations. But it was not until I really accepted that if on a soul level, I selected all of these things, or if on a soul, another way to put that is if on a soul level, I magnetize this, what can I do to take radical responsibility to, again, transmute is this word everybody's using. It's an alchemical process of being like, okay, I trust myself as a being that I can get myself out of this. Obviously, we can have important support systems, people that we counsel with, but ultimately, no one is going to do this for me. And that's like, that continues to shed in layers, like almost daily. That's like a daily thing to keep accepting that when triggers come up or things that bother me or irritate, or even on the good side, like it's all part of something that's being created within. And there's nothing more empowering than like returning to self and realizing, okay, well then if that's the case, if I keep practicing that I really am I am fully responsible for myself. I'm moving out of, as Paul says, like out of the child archetype. You go through the warrior phase, and then you kind of start to go into the next phase of development. And it's very empowering. And I think that what's interesting with doing, you know, sessions with people is like, it's meant to, it's like you can call it soul recalibration, soul calibration, soul frequency alignment. There's so many different words. I really like love to stay away from labels and words, but I'm just throwing these out so people can get an idea of what I'm saying. But basically, like, it's you kind of like you're holding a cup and the other person's holding a cup, and you're filling their cup with something that will allow them to feel their own power. Not like me doing anything. That's metaphorical, but like allowing people to believe in whatever way it needs to be said for them that they have the key. Like I'm only a mirror to what they already have inside. And sometimes I think what the work can do, or what it's supposed to do, is just if my soul came here and me, Mary, my third dimensional avatar, began to remember many ways that I have existed in other lifetimes where I developed certain skills, then why am I here in this life with those skills like coming back full force, like a roaring lion, like just so strong, so intense, especially in the beginning. And it's like, it's also almost like less about trying to figure out why, because that's also the ego. It's like, it's actually now more taking action and surrender, which obviously taking action is the masculine, surrender is the feminine. And lately it's been a lot of this surrender where it's just like, let it go, let it go, like, let it come, detach, detach, detach. And just another thing you said about, what was it? It was something about like, I think humor and laughing, and just how laughing and crying, it's like the same thing. Ultimately, that can be confusing for people to hear too, because they're kind of like, how is that the same thing? Because it's like what? But basically, it's like, it makes perfect sense, because what that's speaking to is the truth that those are just experiences like moving through us like a wave. And if we can, the more fortified we can get in our physical avatar and within self, these things don't knock us to the ground as much. And I mean more, I think, the painful lessons, because I definitely have entered into a phase of my life where the more belly laughs and like just almost extreme joy that I can feel, I take when I can, and I fully let that be, because I finally realized, okay, when you keep repeatedly experiencing something painful within, especially if it just was going on for so long, you kind of almost don't even have a reference point outside of that. You don't really know that there's another option. So then it's like, but then through the journey of the soul awakening, basically, it's like, okay, I actually, if I'm radically responsible for my life and my reactions and my responses, my judgments, my projections, I'm bringing my power back to me, which is cool. It's not always easy to take full responsibility for things, but the more I'm doing it, the better it's going. So I'm going to keep doing that. And then I'm also feeling more joy. So what this means is I'm not identifying so much with the pain anymore. I'm not so attached to the story of pain because I'm not a victim anymore. I don't feel sorry for myself anymore because I don't have a subconscious belief that something is going to save me. And whether people want to attribute that to past life trauma, indoctrination from certain systems, I've looked into all that. At this point, it is what it is. We can know where they're coming from. That's definitely empowering, important. But now it's like, okay, that phase is past. Now it's like, I don't resonate with that anymore. I don't resonate with some belief that something outside of me is going to fix, change, save. And I know this is material and stuff that everyone listening has heard a million times. Like, there's no knight in shining armor that's going to save you, like, I think also what's really something that's helpful is if people are trying to connect with, whether they call it higher dimensional aspects of themselves, their higher self, archangels, galactic beings, whatever you want to call it, the consciousness is within. The consciousness to connect to those things is within. And the more that you can get your physical avatar to go deeper and deeper within, to resonate with those frequencies, you can quantumly entangle with the consciousness of these things through intention, because our universe is intention. It's thought. And thought, there's now studies that prove or show that thought travels faster than the speed of light. And if thought travels faster than the speed of light, the thing that's illuminating our universe, that's the force behind it. And so it's like, and again, I know everyone listening's probably heard all this stuff, subconscious reprogramming. What thoughts are running through your mind each day? Like, and it can get exhausting. And it's like, you know what? Then some days I do want to just chill and be human and like just kick back. And I can't necessarily say that I have the total freedom to just kick back and Netflix and chill, because once your Kundalini arises, you're on. Like, the light is on, and the switch option to go off is no longer an option. Like, even, caffeine, sugar, like I said, movies, YouTube, scrolling, the light is on as those things are happening. So you're conscious, you're aware that you're doing it, and it's not really solving it. It's not really numbing or distracting. And so it kind of creates more of this, I don't want to say torture, but just more of this frustration. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road, or what separates the boys from the men, or the ladies from the girls, to be all inclusive here. But like, to be, and I'm sharing this because I think this comes down to, and I'll just kind of end on this, like, that kind of victim energy. Like, I just want to relax. I just want to chill. Like, I don't want to think more about this. And it's kind of like the higher self, I don't, okay, girl. Well, and so, and it's not as intense or such a battle anymore, but it's also like, again, another version of, okay, if I'm being tasked by this aspect of me that my human self is resisting or fighting or challenging, will I rise up today, or will I create a little bit more pain for myself? And I guess with that sort of masochistic liking pain or addiction to norepinephrine, which is the pain neurotransmitter, um, we become biochemically addicted, and we can become biochemically addicted to emotions, which is just exactly what you were saying. Like, and so I think with, addiction energy, and kind of also what you said about the retreat that you went to and how they were trying to push you, that is aggression. That's like, aggression is the aspect of consciousness that isn't conscious to itself. So it's aggressively seeking something that it thinks it doesn't have. And so any ways, and I share about this a lot because it's been something I've had to really resolve within, is any ways that we are aggressive with ourself, and that includes, it's like the judgment. It's like the judging of what mood I'm in this moment. If I'm in a low mood, or if I'm whatever, judging, or it's like, then there's judging on top of that. It's like, so, it's just the hugging of the aggression with inviting divine grace in, which I know, and I said, like, however many minutes ago, I'll end on this one and I'll say this, but now I'm saying that again.
Yeah.
But like, with anyone listening who never had a healthy relationship with a caregiver, or maybe they didn't have a caregiver, or maybe they were in a foster home, or maybe they had an abusive situation, or step parents, or divorce, whatever, and maybe they were or have a missing piece of the divine mother or divine feminine, or the divine father, the divine masculine. And so I think also a big part of sort of this arising, awakening thing is like, okay, well, if no one's going to take care of me right now, like, I'm that those inner pieces, those younger aspects of the psyche that are really seeking nourishment, can only really be assuaged by the aspect of your inner self that's a little older than that aspect, that will create resonance within with that divine maternal, divine feminine energy, and divine masculine. And I want to say too, what's been helpful for me is like, the less of the divine masculine image of a man in a chair in the sky, the better. So it's like, the more of this resonance with frequency, and, really getting down to the characteristics of what a divine masculine energy is, because it is inside. And same with that divine feminine. And that people get so twisted up with like those words. So it's like, okay, divine active, divine conquering, divine holding, divine grace, divine creation, divine submission, divine reception. I find that to be so much more personally helpful, because in some moments I might need more divine holding from my inner masculine, because my inner feminine is going through something rocky. And if I don't have that established within my own scaffolding, then okay, here's another couple hours of pain. And I'm very ready to not be in more pain. And it's just something that
Yes.
obviously Paul talks a lot about the pain teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's
like
his
in
favorite
our,
subject.
yeah. And honestly, like in that conversation, I was just like, of course, because it's like pain is that the greatest teacher.
Mm-hmm. Makes you pay
And
attention.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's wild. I mean, I love that perspective of pain as a teacher, that Paul talks about. And I love everything you just shared too, because you hit a nail on the head. It's like we have a true self and we have the illusory self. And our really whole mission here is to wake up to the true self and not completely cast the illusory self aside. So I think anyway, but understand that that illusory self allows you to have an experience where you think you're a separate human being. You think you're in this thing called the earth. You think that this thing called time is controlling you or is something that you have to abide by anyway.
That's a huge one. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and you get to play a game. It's kind of like this, right? Like, let's say Grand Theft Auto, okay, because it's an open world map and it's not from medieval times. So it's the most similar to real life, I think. It's not at all, okay, for anyone who's played it. But in terms of video games, I think it's the most relevant to what we live here. And it's kind of like, so you have a character in GTA that you'd make, all right? And remember when I used to play it, like, you'd have a main character, you'd start out with like nothing and you'd slowly start doing missions and you'd build your house or whatever. But imagine if you got so into the game that you actually thought you were the main character and you completely lost all awareness that you were the guy holding the controller or the girl holding the controller that was looking at a TV screen in which this main character was the main character. That's kind of how I look at life. And so, again, if we look at it through just that certain lens, the whole idea is when your illusory self starts to get all worked up, aka your ego, starts to bring up emotions for you to feel and these kind of things, it takes a lot of discernment, a lot of stillness with self to understand what the through line is. And like you were saying, right, we have these older parts and younger parts. And that's part of the reason I love integrated family systems and IFS as a whole, because it's so easy, at least for me, to capitulate the kind of inner workings of my psyche. And so, if we allow the illusory parts to win over the true parts, then pain occurs overall, right? But if we can remind ourselves of who we truly are, the true self, the person that's playing the video game, and we do that through a lot of the things that I'm sure everyone listening has heard before. You can do it through really anything: meditation, breath work, walks in the woods, psychedelics. Really anything. Like anything can be a pathway back to true self. But if we are courageous enough to create devotion with ourselves, that even when we wake up in the morning and maybe we have this idea to go watch TV or make a coffee or go talk to someone or whatever, no, this is my time with myself. And we get ourselves devoted to that practice because we understand the ego's always going to have a better idea than sitting in stillness, because the ego fears that, because the ego is terrified that you'll remember you aren't the actual ego. And so, again, that's not, I think, the ego's fault. The ego doesn't really have the full scope of awareness. And I think it's all part of the game that we chose to play here. It wouldn't be fun if it was easy. All right. Because for everyone listening, to sign up to be a human being, you got to be kind of a crazy person. All right. And so chances are, no one here is a beginner when it comes to whatever we want to call it, soul evolution, whatever it is. Yeah. So the game's got to kind of be played on the expert. And I really think that's what the earth realm is it's kind of like for the people that are the extreme sporters of the ethereal realm, like the people that in this world will squirrel suit and stuff like that. Well, we're kind of all that when it comes to soul evolution and being part of the earth school. And so I think that one of the biggest things that I agree with everything you said, but one of the things that was like, yes, is that in the space of spirituality right now, what I've noticed is that there are a lot of people that might sound really good, that when you actually surround yourself with them or you just really tune in and you have discernment, one could realize maybe, just maybe, these people don't understand these things as much as they really do. Like Paul is someone who really gets it. He really gets it. And you can tell because I've listened to hundreds and hundreds of hours of him, and he is a practicing non-dualist. So for instance, right? God, I mean, Paul Chek would never say something is good or bad, right? Objectively. He might say, hey, red meat's not good for me because I have a fungal thing and whatever. That's a subjective truth, okay? But objectively, he's not going to be saying, do this or don't do that, or everyone's got to do this, or this is good for everyone, because he would realize that's just pure ego. But when you listen to certain people that are out there saying they've woken up in the dream, and then they're trying to tell you, oh, cannabis is bad, or even alcohol is bad, or whatever, a true non-dualist would never say that. Like Jesus and Buddha, this is going to be maybe a shocker to some of you, maybe not. If you've read Disappearance of the Universe and taken my wisdom on that one, all right, because it's a really good book, then this won't be that crazy for you. But at the end of the day, Jesus and Buddha would have never wanted to create a religion. Because what is a religion? Rules for a game that isn't real. A non-dualist wants you to wake up to the real aspect of what's going on here. Not because the game is stupid or it's worthless, but because you have a much better dream when you're lucid during it. You know, again, like one of the you know, it's hard if someone listening to this hasn't had like a non-dual experience, right? Whether through psychedelics, meditation, whatever. It can kind of be weird to picture why this matters. Like, yeah, okay, logically I can understand it. You guys are saying it's great, but why does it really matter? So I found I had a good analogy come to me that was, you know, if you ask someone or ask yourself right now, have you ever dreamed before at night? Yes, I've dreamed. Have you ever had a lucid dream? Yeah, I've had a lucid dream. Which one was more fun? The lucid one. Why? Well, because I could take advantage of I could do everything I wanted to. Okay, that's exactly what's going on here. That's why you want to wake up. Because it's way more fun when you realize death is not an ending whatsoever. It's way more fun when you realize no one is actually here. So who you think you're losing is actually just parts of you that your ego is projected out there, that when the dream is over and you've woken up during it, you're completely back to oneness. And oneness cannot have somethingness in it. And that's, I think, something that when I really got why, you know, 8 years ago when I was listening to Paul and he was saying, you know, God is. That's the only thing we can say about God. But yet how many people say God is great, God is this, God is that? It's not that that's bad. It's just not real, because the second you put a condition in front of God, which is non-conditional and unconditional, you have created the condition and you're not talking about God now. You're talking about subject-object duality in this dream world. So again, it's really just discernment and differentiation that we're talking about here, right? Like understanding like, okay, I have a sensation. My sensation is valid, but what story am I placing upon it? Not what story can I blame the unconscious projection of my guilt that's being shown to me out there. Not who can I hate that's the president, what's happening in this country, and how do I feel? Like all of that is really just you. However you're seeing that is you. And so at the end of the day, we get to take accountability for our own creations. That's what allows us to leave the child archetype, like you were talking about, and enter real adulthood. Not just, hey, I'm aged chronologically 34 years or 40 years or 50 years, because I can imagine I'd speak for you when I say this, but it's very easy to realize that just because someone's in the body of a 50-year-old, they can still be a 12-year-old inside, okay? Emotionally, you know, integrity-wise, you know, like, and so at the end of the day, what we're really talking about here is the real game. And the real game is to wake up so you can really understand who and what you truly are, and also what you are not. And I think that's a big part of this school that we're in, is realizing everything we're not. Because again, God didn't create this universe. This universe is the ego's creation. God doesn't even know this is happening. It's like a little part of God broke off and had a silly little thought that seemed innocent at the time. What if I could be separate from God? And it was just a curious thought. And then boom, this whole world got created. And if you think of the prodigal son story, this is what I really think is going on here, based on what I've experienced, based on coaching hundreds of people, and based on just what my intuition says as well, is that really this whole thing is just a prodigal son story. Have you heard that story before?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty common one. For anyone who hasn't heard it, the general gist is two brothers that live at home with their dad. Everything's great. And their dad gives them everything they need. You know, they work in the farm and stuff. They're not just like spoiled rich kids, but they have everything they need. And one brother decides it's not really enough because he wants to go explore. So he leaves home one day and he's like, I'm going to go do all these things and blah, 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 blah. Right. So he goes out into the world, loses all his money, and comes back with his tail between his legs. And he is convinced his dad's going to fucking hate him. He's like, God, I had everything. Why did I throw that away? I'll be lucky if I just get made a slave in my dad's kingdom. And then he's walking back, and as soon as his dad sees him, his dad throws up his arms, runs and gives him a hug, and tells one of the servants at the house, go slaughter a pig. We're going to have a huge feast tonight. My son is home. And the son's like, what the hell? And the son realizes, holy shit, like my dad always loved me. Why did I create this unconscious guilt that my dad hated me? And so I really think that's what we're all going through. And the ego's illusion is to make it look like, oh, you know, my mom did this to me when I was a kid. So either I've forgiven her or I hold disdain towards her. And anytime we hold disdain towards someone, anytime we judge someone, whatever, if there's no one out there, then who are we really judging? Ourselves. Because of this deep-rooted unconscious guilt that we feel around this separation from God that God isn't even aware of and wouldn't care. Because where do emotions exist? Emotions are conditional. Oneness is not somethingness, okay? So you can't have emotion when you're oneness. So what is the ego really doing here? It's projecting that God has emotions. And this is what religion does, right? God's going to cast you down. God's this, God's that. No, that's man or woman projecting their own emotions and ego onto something they know nothing about. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that that plays out in infinitum amount of ways here, whether or not it's the stories, the emotions, the person that cut you off, the parents that didn't love you, the person that, you know, did something horrible to you. Like, yes, I get it. It sucks. It's painful. Okay. But at the end of the day, there are two options. Figure it out or don't, but no one's going to come save you. And so I know, like, I get it. Sounds harsh, but it really is just like the ultimate tough love, because at the end of the day, the only way to get out of pain is to realize who you really are and who's feeling the pain. Because when you realize who's feeling the pain, it's not who you really are. Who you really are is in oneness. Who you really are doesn't have a condition to feel pain. Who you really are is oneness. And so what is the part that's feeling the pain, and how much are we glorifying the body that's not real? It's a projection of the ego. Like, I mean, it's very interesting, you know? And again, I don't pretend to know any of this. I just believe it, and I know it for myself subjectively, because out of everything I've learned, the amalgamation of do this ritual, do this, do that. I mean, the spiritual space is insane right now, you know? And I fell into it. All right. I bobbed and weaved it. I got nicked, you know, and, you know, again, I told you I was in a mystery school. I convinced myself I needed all these rituals and Kabbalah and all this stuff. And then really I realized in reading A Course in Miracles, no, I need one thing, which is forgiving every time I believe the dream is real. And the more I forgive, the less I'll be attached to the side that gets emotions and gets thoughts and gets all these things. And the more that I'll be connected to my true self, which is oneness. So as that energy flows through me, it just completely obliterates everything that I thought was me, that I convinced myself was me, that I told myself over and over, I have trauma, I have to deal with this. All of that goes out the window when we can just remember who we really are. And that's what I'm focused on now.
100%. I mean, there's so many things that you said that like sparked so many different thoughts. There's two main things I wanted to say. One of them is, I've shared this before on a podcast or something. I don't think yours though, so I can repeat it now.
Let's go. I'm excited.
there is this, I get obviously a lot of, you know, visions. I'm definitely like a seer. So, I learn where I learn from, where I learn these things is from the spirit realm. It's from the ether. And forgiveness it's just huge. So I love that piece you just said, because it really is this constant practice and action that's important to take when you are desirous or in resonance with the aspect of your point in life where you want to not continue to make yourself suffer. But basically there was this woman who was driving, and it's interesting, like if you want to observe people where they're at spiritually, just like watch people driving, like look at their car. And I'm not saying judging people if they have
the person's got a Kia,
you know, like I'm not saying, oh, if they don't have a G-Wagon they're not. I'm more so talking about how are they treating their Pinto wagon, you know? How are they treating that badass car? Or Honda Civic, or it doesn't, I'm not saying, but how are they treating this vehicle that they're driving in? There's that.
Mm.
How fast are they driving? Are they respecting the speed limit?
Mm.
Um, are they tailgating people? Are they getting road rage?
Mm.
Are they driving on empty and burning out their car's engine?
Mm.
Um, just it's like a simple metaphor that it's like every day I get in my car, there's just more and more about this analogy that my higher self just is having lots of joy, like having me observe. And
Mm.
it's very interesting because if we're running behind and we're rushing,
Mm.
why are we running behind? It starts before we get in the car, but our car is the thing that's transiting us back and forth. Or if you take public transit, you can, if this is something you can reflect on there too.
Mm.
But this woman was in an intersection, and I don't even know what happened, but in her mind, her perception was that she was wronged or cut off or something. She was, flying into road rage. And as she was doing it, the true aspect of her, so like basically her physical form was doing one thing, and then this etheric version of her was stabbing herself like
Mm.
this.
Mm.
With every single yell and judgment that she was projecting, she was boom, boom. And it was
Mhm.
very violent, actually. Um, and this term of like violence and aggression obviously is something that's surfacing on a planetary level, a cosmic level, an individual level. And it's because, returning home to love, returning home to oneness, returning home to truth, and kind of getting through that battlefield of aggression that we might experience with ourselves, or violence or self abuse. Those are all forms of that.
Mm.
But when I saw that, that creates in the spiritual body, because as multidimensional beings, we have multidimensional aspects of ourself. And
Mm.
so she was literally re-wounding herself, re-stabbing herself, creating bleeding in her spirit body, right in between her heart energy center and her center of will and of power. And she was taking that energy of unconsciousness within her was turning on herself, on itself, and creating I don't want to say like damage, because our spirit bodies are so organic and ethereal and easily healed and can be brought back to wholeness, but we can damage ourselves. We
Mm.
can abuse and scar
Mm.
and create deep bleeding and pain within ourselves. And so that forgiveness piece that you just mentioned, like on that spiritual level, because like if we cut ourselves, we can go to the hospital or a band-aid or a cast, but
Mm.
what do we do on these other levels? And I think these invisible to most people, but they're very alive and very active and very real. And so the forgiveness piece kind of connects with that aspect of where we connect with these inner parts that we may have to actually like find and
Mm.
create relationship with, which also connects with the IFS, the internal family systems. We have to create relationship and awareness of these um, parts that may have broken off or
Mm.
fractured, so that's like the soul retrieval piece. That's
Mm.
soul retrieval is interesting because it's like, it's so abstract, I think, maybe to some people, or it's like, what does that mean? Or that sounds so intense. How, like, or scary, a piece of us broke off. It's like,
Mm.
yes. And that piece, it's like swimming in a, a dark cave, and it can't see the walls. It can't see any light. And so, but if we're fortifying our higher aspects, um, meaning if we're fueling it with intention, with self-care, with self-love, um, conscientiousness, forgiveness, forgiving ourselves for judging ourselves or projecting that outward on others, which, it's like driving in your car, judging that person for speeding, judging that person for tailgating,
Mhm.
getting out of the car and judging that person for cutting that person in the line, judging that person for not tipping. It's like even just the little breadcrumb judgments. But it's okay to catch them. And it's also so key to take that forgiveness and that's done just through really conscious, intentional thought within self. And I think one of the things you shared earlier too, just about whatever spiritual community practices and all this stuff, I will share personally, which again, this is for me personally. So I'm not like suggesting this or anything for other people, but it might resonate with some people, is that all of the practices have been so paramount and key because it led me to this truth within my own self, which is that, sometimes if you were in a place of being of abuse, of self-abuse, of self hate or self loathing or self judgment or isolation, self isolation, thinking that you're separate, no one gets you, whatever it is, that those aggressive parts can seek practices aggressively and aggressively judge if isn't being immediately fixed, because the aggression has this perception that it has to disappear immediately through this intense physical practice or whatever it is. And that's not on the practice, that's obviously on the individual. But I have found that sitting with self without talking, in this day and age that we are in, we have screens everywhere. I mean, even if you put your phone down, you go out in your car, you've got a screen in your car. You have billboard screens. You have all these businesses have LED screens now. There's cameras everywhere. There's surveillance. There's artificial eyes and artificial things all around us. And obviously, those emit frequencies. But if we are, and I'll just kind of, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'll just say, like, the more that I understand things through frequency and attributing certain attributes to a frequency stream, which is exactly how you connect with certain things, you have to really get to know what your frequency emission is. What are you transmitting? And what are you receiving? Because part of what you are receiving is what you're transmitting, and part of what you're receiving is what you're bringing in through what your intention is. And your antenna, is like the part of you that the stuff is streaming through. We have some people refer to it as like the vertical column, the spiritual spine that holds each of our energy centers. And that's more the energetic aspect of this energetic toroidal field that we are. But so we have to get ourselves into enough of a space of nature to receive enough negative ions to not only reground and even just kind of get out of the static, which takes however much time, depending if you're in an office job or if you just flew on a plane and we're on vacation, business vacation. You got to get far enough out somewhere that's away from any towers or exposures to even just then have some silence. And that's not even talking about the internal silence. That's the frequency silence. So then you get in with yourself and you're kind of in real silence. And then there's a new level of like maybe discomfort that might come up because it's like, it's really quiet right now.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm like really not distracted. Like, I'm not distracted by my agitation right now. I'm not distracted by my judgment because like, it's like quiet. Like my ears feel, is this a good feeling? Because my ears feel like this. It's like, because we've got the Bluetooth headphones, we've got the noise canceling, we've got the, and so you kind of get in that mode and then just these thoughts arise and all of a sudden it's like, okay, so then you ride that wave almost. And, the reason why I'm saying this is because with my experience with working with people over the last several years is that a lot of people are really unaware of what frequency they're emitting. what their unique energetic signature is. Which is why when I said I really resonate with nature and silence and a ton of solitude, like a ton of solitude, like chunks of hours of the day with no interaction with other human beings. That's necessary for me. I'm not saying that's necessary for other people, but with that, there's so much more, the space time continuum that these higher aspects exist on is not the same as the third dimensional space. The laws are different. And so when you can really at least give yourself the space to get into a space where it's quiet enough internally and externally, then you can begin to actually receive and listen. Like the other part of you that whispers much more softly and is much more potent has very specific direction for you that absolutely no one else could give you other than you. And these books, these texts, these teachers, people who do sessions, whatever, are very helpful. All they really will do, though, is continue to show you, whether they're helping you or not helping you, realize that it's you that is the one that has the answers. And I think what's interesting with the morphogenetic field, the Akashic, the ether, all of us are these memory banks. Everybody's walking around with memory banks. So meaning like we have a frequency that we're emitting. So that's the emotional stuff, the astral stuff, the fourth dimensional stuff, the part of us that bridges us to our higher self aspects. But then we have these memories of this lifetime and other lifetimes that are also within our multidimensional aspect. And so the reason why I bring that up is because if you are in a Kundalini awakening or really going through an awakening, or you're deep on your journey and you're just listening to us chat, whatever, it's when you can integrate these memories or these frequencies of self, not only do they kind of come into more of a wholeness or an integration. I feel like integration is such a it's such a popularly used word, and I felt so confused for a long time about what it meant because I was struggling to integrate and ground. So I was kind of like, what exactly does this mean? Because this part of me was still trying to do it actively. So I'm like, what does this mean for me though? Because this somatic person says this person says this, but none of that makes sense for me. And so then it's like, okay, Mary, then if you are responsible for yourself, then find out what that means for you. And so then there's, you might sign up for a Vipassana, which I did. And I am not saying that it's something that you have to do, but a Vipassana, you sit for 10 to 12 hours a day in silence. You can't bring a book. You can't bring a pen. You can't bring paper. You are isolated in a place and you take a vow of silence. And that road led me to understand a very simple thing. Like after that entire thing, the biggest lesson was you must sit with yourself longer than you think you need to almost always. Because even after like a 10 to 12 hour day of just seated silence, it still like wasn't enough. And then take that times 10, still the part of the self that was arising within the higher awareness that I gave time to actually have a moment with me was like, just know that this is a reminder that the more that you can sit with self, the better, because it's not that it's never enough, but there's always more. Because there's always more that we can be bringing in to ourselves, to a non-dual state of stillness, to not only be better for the self but thereby better for all, which is the whole purpose of all of this.
100%. I was laughing when you said the meditation thing, because one of my favorite quotes of all time is meditate for 20 minutes every day. If you don't have 20 minutes, meditate for an hour, and it's totally like the idea of like, yeah, the ego's of course going to tell you don't have time. All right. Like that's the whole reason you do it. Right. And, Mary, this has been amazing. I wish I could keep talking to you for friggin' 3 more hours. I got to get you back on because,
I know,
this conversation, what we're talking about right now is my personal favorite, because again, like, I'm not perfect at this by any means, and I think that that's what makes the game so exciting, though, is that it's I don't know if you ever get to a point, maybe enlightenment, I don't know, where, you're not still having those judgments come up and whatnot. But what I always tell everyone is the goal is to remember more and forget less. And if you can do that, great. That's perfect, And so I'm so excited to get you back on. I'm so excited I got to have you on today. Where can everyone find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? I know you got the course, you do a lot of different stuff. Where can they connect with you if they're really resonating with this? Because again, guys, like, please take advantage of this. Like, Mary is not an ad. She's a subtract person. And that's one of the many reasons I love her so much. She's helped me immensely in being able to subtract. I remember when I was at the mystery school and I showed you a picture and you literally looked at me like, you don't need this, right? And in that moment, it was kind of like, yeah, I'm aware. And it wasn't that like I'm better than them. It wasn't that. It was just like, dude, like God, first of all, even if he built this universe, would not make you have to pay $30,000 to reach enlightenment. Like that's just a materialistic ego thing. So, again, Mary's really good at helping you subtract from what you think the equation of yourself is to really understand who you truly are. So I imagine some people are going to feel really resonant with the idea of allowing you to help them subtract. So where can I send people to get that help, Mary?
Yes. And I also just want to say thank you so much for having me. You really are like, because I have a little Patreon channel you've been on.
Yeah.
And I started that because I was with another network for a while. And it's when you're interviewing people, it's a whole different ball game. Like I had never been in that. I was always like
the
and
interviewee.
So when you're doing it,
yeah.
It's so, and you are exceptional because I've been doing it with more people now, and you really, you're just like such an intelligent, like you think so quickly, you track well, it's fun to listen to. So like, I just give you props for that. Like, and
thanks,
and
Mary.
you make it enjoyable too for the person on.
Thank you.
So, and then I have my website. It's just my name. It's marybuckingham.com. You can book sessions there. I'm, naturally kind of trying to move away from sessions, which is why I have I guess you could say course, which I get
program, course, tomato,
program, a course,
yeah.
experience, whatever you want to call it. It's, but basically it's meant to take people through basically like a session, but it just kind of trains you how to do it on your own. And you get a certification at the end. And, I work with people who are therapists who are trying to move more into like spiritual modalities, people who are brand new on their journey, people who are vets and they just want to, they want to see what this next new thing is. Because I think there's a lot of people coming forward with more multidimensional sort of like cosmic wisdom that they're connecting with. That's just a different energy, because it's time right now for people whose souls are connected to those energies, who are on these very specific missions to bring in specific frequencies to specific pockets of planet Earth that are part of a more larger humanitarian cause, if you will. Like it's so it's a unique approach, and it's not it's almost like all merely suggestive, because ultimately the point is for you to go through it and just feel closer to self. It's really what it is. It's meant to show you how to clear self from anything that's basically just creating illusion from your true self, your true intellect, your true channel. So if you are interested in that, my email is experiencewithmary@gmail.com. Sometimes people like to book a session just to get that session in, and then they're like, I really want to do the course. So the sessions, it doesn't matter which one you book, because ultimately I think I have like 3 options. There's one called a custom hybrid, and then there's one that's just the 57-minute. But basically, like, the reason why I say it doesn't matter is because, like, I connect with your frequency. And basically what it is it's a soul frequency scan. So I ask that people don't give me any information, and we don't speak actually for the first, it could be 5 to 15 minutes. I actually just say what you're non-verbally communicating with me, because telepathy is my, I would say, or yeah, like nonverbal connecting, telepathy, whatever you want to call it, is my primary mode of communication, which is probably why I keep mentioning how I love silence, because ultimately, like, others, if you want to say other civilizations, like, they don't verbally talk. Some don't even have mouths. So it's like, because they connect heart to heart, and that's the communication. It is a literal stream of frequency, and that is the communication. And I call me an optimist, but I think that as a collective, we are ascending into that direction. I think that we are all going through a massive purging, clearing, a cocoon, if you want to call it that. And so that we can look at one another and connect. And the mode of communication through that type of communicating, which is just frequency communication, is much quicker, and a lot more information is transmitted, because it's in the lower dimensions or whatever, like the more separated from spirit dimensions, the more dense materialized dimensions have to move through more masks or more blocks in order to really connect, which is why if you're feeling alone, you're not crazy. You might just be very highly sensitive, and you're feeling the pain of others or yourself, because you're feeling the pain of other people being disconnected or you being disconnected. So, and then I have a 27-minute one, but, and then I have an online community as well. So yeah, it's like, and then social media, Instagram is just my name, Mary Buckingham with 2 underscores. And that's
I'll
it.
make sure to link it all in the show notes too, so everyone can find it. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Mary is such a gem. I'm so grateful to have her as a friend and just amazing person in my life. If you want to see her work live, our last episode we did on Highly Optimized, it was probably back around March of 2022. If you go back, shouldn't be that far back, because I only stopped the podcast right after that. But we do a session. I don't think we've had the video out yet, but that's her and I doing the work that she does. She brings me actually through, and I get a lot of ideas and downloads from that. So if you want to go check that out, please go give it a listen. And if you resonate, follow that cue. You know, again, at the end of the day, what are we talking about here, right? Following your true self, following and listening to your intuition, to the people, places, and things that are going to be right for you to evolve and subtract back into who and what you truly are. So guys, thank you so much. If you loved this episode, if you love the show, go give it a 5-star review so we can find more cool people like you out there. And until next time, everybody, I hope you were having the best day of your entire life, and may the source be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace.